Hi, my name is Charlie Bowers, and in this session we're going to talk about retirement concerns, also known as retirement roadblocks and maybe even retirement sins. What are these things that impact the confidence that you have as you move toward retirement? So let's go ahead and get started. So you see in this slide we call it retirement sins because you're trying to plan for a great life in retirement. It's so important to have a plan to get you there. I like what Harley Davidson, the motorcycle company, said, when you're writing the story of your life, don't let anyone else hold the pen. Well, you're getting ready to write the next story of your life, and that's going to be retirement. So we're going to take a look at some of the things that can hinder you having a successful retirement, or the one that you're really desiring, the one that you're looking for. So what's the first one? No vision for retirement. Most people think about retirement as, all right, I have this budget and I'm going to live within that, and whatever falls out, falls out. But that's not the way we teach to do that. Life is more than just your standard of living. You need a quality of life in retirement. So we say, all right, let's have a vision for our retirement. What do we want retirement to look like? I want to travel, I want to be with the grandkids, I want to be able to do this or that. All of a sudden in retirement, you're going to have a whole month of Saturdays that you've got to fill. So it's so important to fill it with things that you're passionate about, things you want to do. So we always say, retire to something, don't retire from something. For instance, a few years back, we were talking to one of the CPAs that we work with, and she told us, you know, I have been to 3 funerals of my former clients. They had just retired recently. They didn't retire to anything. Their purpose in life kind of went away, so they passed away. And we don't want that for you. We want to retire to something, retire to a purpose. And this is especially important for men. As a man, we tend to associate who we are by what we do much more so than women do. So if I am the CEO of a company or an engineer or a doctor, then all of a sudden I retire and I'm not, that really impacts who I am. So I better have something that I'm moving toward so that I'll be excited to get up in the morning. No comprehensive financial plan, and that's a huge one. We have people come into the office all the time, and I say, do you have a plan? Oh, yes, I do. May I see it? And they hand me their statement. It's an IRA statement, it's their 401k statement, and those are all pieces of the plan, but they are not a plan, and you don't generate any confidence from just having those statements. As an example, we had a gentleman come in that had just been divorced and getting remarried, several kids, and we went through our simplicity planning process, and I was asking some questions. Said, okay, when would you like to retire? And he kind of looked at me and shook his head and was feeling miserable. Charlie, there's no way I can retire. It's like we're starting over. I'm just going to roll the dice and hopefully make it. And you know, that's a sad state to be in, but there's so many people in this world that are in that state, they don't know what they can do. So we took his information and ran a simplicity report for him. And he came back in a couple of weeks later and we presented the results. And if you're familiar with the simplicity report, we're trying to show you, we're calculating for you with a mathematical and unbiased equations, what is the minimum rate of return you have to achieve for the rest of your life, and we typically use age 95, in order to retire the way you want to retire, with the income that you're desiring. And when he came back in, his retirement rate, that number that he had to achieve, was 1.72%. And my goodness, knowing you only had to average 1.72% for the rest of your life, that is not as scary as thinking I've got to have $2 million in my nest egg when I retire. So he came in 2 weeks prior and was really down about his opportunities for retirement, and he left 2 weeks later feeling great. I only have to earn 1.7%, and we helped him strategize on how to do that and create that income stream that's so vital in retirement. 3, we've got no annual checkup. That's a question of discipline, and when things happen during a year, you got to go in and update your plan. A lot of times, people that really do have plans, they're real thick binders, and they just go on a shelf, and it's hard to understand what's in them. And our simplicity plan is 6-7 pages of some good information, good results to help empower you to make those financial decisions moving into retirement. And life happens. You have events that happen all the time. It could be that a child moved back in. I want to go on this great big trip and I need to know if I can afford to. Well, that's where the annual checkups come in, to make sure that you can still do the things you want to do in retirement. The other one here, no strategy for investing. Now, how big is that? Let me tell you another story, and it's not a question of no strategy for investing. It may be a mistake in how these folks were investing. My wife is an only child, and a few years back, her parents started having failing health. And we decided we needed to move them closer to us so that we could help take care of them. And they were agreeable to that, thought it was a good idea because they could see they were having some issues. And Lori went to a number of senior living facilities near where we lived and noticed they were doing a lot of remodeling. And finally asked one of the directors, and she said, I can't help but notice that you're doing a lot of those remodeling here to your facility, and a number of these other facilities were doing the same. What's going on? And he told her that because so many people lost so much money when the market turned down in 2008, that they can't afford these small apartments that they're living in right now. We're having to make apartments smaller so that more people can afford to live here. And as a matter of fact, you see that gentleman over there in the wheelchair, he can't afford the smaller apartment. He has to go back home and live with his family. And it's our position that no one at that stage of life should be invested in a way to where they might lose their home. And what was happening was they were still invested in a growth mentality, meaning I'm going to sell my stocks and bonds to generate the supplemental income I need. Maybe they have Social Security or a pension, but they needed a supplemental income stream, and they're selling their stocks and bonds. Well, maybe it's $5,000 a month. It doesn't matter what the market does, they still need that $5,000 a month. So when the market dropped 40%, they had to sell a lot more of their stocks and bonds to generate that $5,000 a month they needed. And that just blew up their retirement. They don't know if they're going to make it. They lost all confidence because they had to dig so deep into their nest egg. So that's something you've really got to plan for. And if you don't plan for that, you kind of fall into the mentality of people that watch the market all the time. What do you do? How do you compare how well you're doing with anybody else? Well, we tend to look at everybody else, and we call that the market. So if the market's up, market's down, we kind of gauge our level of contentment with how the market's doing. And that may or may not make any sense for you because the market doesn't care about you and it doesn't know what you need. And what you need is going to be pointed out in the plan. But we're very emotional beings. And according to a Dow bar study, let's say the S&P has earned roughly 10.3% year after year after year over the long haul. Well, the average investor, and including money managers, have only achieved a third of that. And why is that? Because they're buying and selling like this chart here. So people get in and the market goes up and people think, oh, I better get in now. I can't afford not to enjoy the market as it keeps going up. And then all of a sudden the market kind of comes down. And then we get scared, panic and despair set in, said, I can't afford to lose anymore, I'm going to sell. And shortly after that, the market comes back up. So instead of buying low and selling high like we're supposed to do, a lot of people, because of emotions, because they don't have a plan to help them not do that, to give them some guidance, they tend to sell low and buy high, which is not a good idea for your retirement planning. No diversification. You've probably heard that. One of the rules of thumb is don't put all of your eggs in one basket. But what most people end up doing is they don't put all of their eggs in one basket, but it's all in the same truck. So, a lot of things are tied to the economy of the United States, and even if you have some international stocks or positions like that, that you could be in trouble with all of your assets, depending on how you have them diversified or not diversified. Not taking advantage of an employer match, of course, we say, that's essentially free money. Contribute to your 401k to the limit that the employer will match your 401k. And contributing more there may make sense, but maybe it doesn't. Because once we start contributing to all of our qualified accounts, we may be building a tax issue in the future. So I'm not saying don't do it, I'm not saying do it in terms of contributing to your 401k, but you need to have a plan, a strategy, what makes sense for your specific situation on how you should be investing for tax purposes, because every dollar you can save in tax, you can put it in your pocket. We ask the question in our class oftentimes, would you rather have saved $1 in tax, or would you rather have $1 in growth? And you really have to think about what that means. If I have $1 in tax saved, I can put that dollar in my pocket. That's real money. If I've grown $1 in my accounts, that can be taken away tomorrow. And the volatility of the market is very obvious that that is the case, isn't it? And then finally, well, no tax reduction strategy. We think tax reduction strategies are huge, because you've got probably a tax-free bucket, a tax-deferred bucket, and a fully taxable bucket. Which do you take first? And the answer is, it depends. And oftentimes you see people blending, if they're truly strategizing, blending those three streams to minimize the tax that they owe, so that's more dollars in their pocket. So if you fall into those traps with those concerns, with those roadblocks, with those sins, what does that do to you? How confident are you as someone approaching retirement? And this is a lot of the things that we hear from people. Am I on track? How do you know if you're on track or not if you don't have a plan? All you're doing is comparing your performance to everyone else's, and that may or may not give you any confidence that you're going to be able to retire the way you want to. Going back to work, that is a great fear of people. I've retired, I couldn't stand this job, but now something's happened, I've lost something in the market, lost an amount of money in the market, it corrected 15%, and now I'm not so sure I'm going to make it through the rest of my life. My money may run out, I better go back to work. And you don't want to have to go back to work after you've enjoyed a couple of years of retirement. Running out of money, that's the biggest fear that people have. Am I going to outlive my money? If I do, what then? You know, that's a horrible feeling in that lack of confidence. Cost of health care, where is that going? Well, we know as we age, the fear is our premiums are going to continue to go up, but the actual cost of services is going to go up too. So health care is actually the number 2 concern for folks in retirement. What are taxes going to do to me? Well, were you the ones that bought into what most of the financial world teaches? Fully fund that 401k, fully fund that IRA. And if you do, you might have a great big nest egg in a qualified account, meaning that at age 70 and a half, you're going to have to start taking required minimum distributions whether you want to or not. And by the way, your $500,000 401k, how much of that is yours? Well, Uncle Sam's done a great job in saying, you don't have to pay taxes to me right now. Just put it in here and we'll defer those taxes till later down the road. But then when it's time to take it out, all I want is my fair share. And who gets to decide what Uncle Sam's fair share is? He does. And you already know that Social Security is being strained and Medicare is being strained, so it might not be such an unusual thing for Uncle Sam to raise the tax rates, and your $500,000 IRA or 401k may not be worth as much as you think it is, and that can really hurt your retirement if you don't have any other income streams, tax-free income streams, for instance, that could help you out. Will inflation eat up my income? We call that one of the invisible monsters that can destroy a retirement. You think about someone on a fixed pension. Well, with inflation, your income needs continue to go up, but that income stream doesn't. So you've got to plan for how am I going to take care, account for inflation so that I can meet my real income needs. How do you measure your progress? That's the same thing as being on track. Well, that's where one of these simplicity reports can really help you determine if you're on track or not. And do I have enough? Am I going to run out? Again, the simplicity report will help you figure that out. So let's talk about a few takeaways here. You could live a long time. I have 2 grandmoms that lived into their 90s, and it's more and more common for people to live a long life. You know, when Social Security started, the average life expectancy was roughly 62 years, and we're well above that now. We're into the 70s, 80s actually. Taxes, inflation, healthcare are not your friend. You got to plan for them. How secure is your income stream? This is what hurt those folks at the senior living facility. They had to sell stocks and bonds. Their income stream wasn't planned for. They had securities, bonds that moved up and down, and when the value was down, you had to sell a whole lot more of them to get the income that you need. How can you know if you're on track? Well, all of these can be addressed if you have an understandable plan that you actually use and update. So let me show you something on the Simplicity plan that kind of addresses what we were talking about here. Let me pull that up. So this is a page of our Simplicity plan that shows you some information, like this is information about when you want to retire, how much income do you want to live on. We organize assets, and then some key information. Rates of return. You remember I talked about the one gentleman that came in and needed 1.7% to make it all work? Well, that's what this retirement rate is and what it means. This is the minimum rate of return you have to achieve. It's not necessarily a goal, it's a have to in order to make all this up top work. They wanted $100,000 to start with, so to make it work with their existing assets, they need 3.53%. And we also look at, I want to preserve my assets. I don't want to touch them. I want to live off the earnings. And if we want to leave a legacy, if we want to leave something more than what we have. So there's a lot of information in here that can help bring you confidence that you are on track. And the real metric is right here. So we've got a year-by-year assessment of where's the income coming from, pension, Social Security. I got to make a certain amount of money up out of my assets. That's that supplemental income that I was talking about with Lori's parents and the situation that they were facing. But over here is their asset level, the amount of assets they need in the bank, in hand, in order to know that they're on track. So if 5 years from now, let's say they needed or they wanted to take the whole family on a trip around the world, some kind of cruise, and it's going to cost $50,000. The idea is, all right, this is what I need. With that $50,000, do I still have what I need or do I not? If you have more than you need, then you're still on track, no problem. You can make that expense, and it won't be the one that breaks your retirement. If you have less than that, especially significantly less, it's going to say, all right, maybe I need to make some lifestyle changes so that I can get back on track and still live the retirement that I want to live. And so let's go back to where we were. There we go. And so what we're trying to do is help you achieve some confidence. And I'll tell you a story about my daughter when she taught me what confidence really is. And this is the confidence we want you to have regarding your retirement and your retirement plan. She was sitting at the kitchen table one day drawing little pictures. She was probably 4 or 5 at the time, and drawing a picture of something. I didn't know what it was. I looked at it and I said, Jordan, what you doing? I said, I'm drawing a picture. I said, okay. What are you drawing? She said, I'm drawing a picture of God. And I said, well, Jordan, no one really knows what God looks like. She didn't look up, didn't do anything, didn't stop, didn't slow down. She said, they will in a minute. So that's the kind of confidence we want you to have with the Simplicity process. So if this session, this information has struck a chord with you, or you see yourself in some of the scenarios that we've discussed, go ahead and contact us now so that we can get your very own Simplicity report in the works.